Welcome back to Motivation Library. Today we're diving deep into a classic in the self-help world, Attitude is Everything by Jeff Keller.
It's a book people keep coming back to, you know.
For sure.
There's just something about Keller's style, his straightforward style,
Yeah,
and those real-life examples that click with people.
absolutely. And Keller's own story is a big part of that. I mean, the guy was a lawyer, successful, but not happy at all.
Yeah, a lot of our listeners probably get that successful on paper, but not really fulfilled feeling. So what changed for him?
Well, he didn't jump to a whole new career or anything. He started looking at the connection between his thoughts and his experiences, almost like he was missing a piece of the puzzle, you know?
That's where that whole mental filter thing comes in, right?
Exactly.
How our attitude shapes our whole experience.
Exactly. Keller uses this example of two people, Sarah and Sam. They both go to the same coffee shop.
Okay.
Same coffee, same service, but Sarah has a great time, and Sam is totally miserable.
What's the difference?
Their attitudes.
Makes sense. It's like those eye charts. You know, the ones where you got to say which line's clearer?
Yeah.
We've all got this mental window, as Keller puts it.
Right.
But sometimes it gets clouded over with all the negativity, and we're stuck seeing that blurry version of reality.
And it's not like we're born with a grimy window either. Think about how kids learn to walk. They fall down, get up, try again. No drama, just pure optimism.
That's a good point. So are we saying we can choose to clean that window? Like literally choose?
That's what Keller suggests. It's like cleaning a dirty pair of glasses. You shift from focusing on what's wrong to appreciating what's right.
I like that.
Not always easy, though. Keller himself says he struggled with negative thinking. He tells this story about almost missing out on a real estate investment.
Oh.
Yeah, he let fear and doubt take over completely. Talked himself out of taking action.
That reminds me of that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Goes right to one of the book's big ideas, we become what we think about.
Yeah,
Not that Keller's the first to say it. I mean, Henry Ford, Napoleon Hill, tons of others have said the same thing.
it's true. But if our thoughts really have that much power, how do we actually change them? Especially when we're stuck in a negative spiral.
Right. Good point.
Yeah,
That's where Keller gets practical. He talks about becoming aware of our self-talk, you know, that voice in our head that's always going.
yeah, for sure.
We often don't even realize how negative it can be.
Oh, absolutely.
So he says, replace those thoughts. Consciously choose thoughts that actually help you support what you want.
It's like changing the channel in your mind to something more uplifting.
Exactly. But it's more than just thinking positive thoughts. Keller also talks about surrounding yourself with positive influences.
Okay, so like what?
Reading inspiring books, listening to motivational stuff, and being around people who lift you up, you know?
Like you're creating this positive feedback loop.
Yeah, exactly. The more positive input you get, the more your thoughts and beliefs start to change in that direction.
And then there's visualization, which Keller calls creating mental movies of what you want. He has this amazing story about Celine Dion.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah. From when she was young, she would picture herself performing on stage in front of huge crowds.
And she did it. I mean, she went from this small Canadian town to being one of the biggest stars ever.
It's incredible. But is that just wishful thinking or what? Is there something more to visualization?
Keller digs into the science of it. He points out that athletes use it, musicians, even business people use visualization to get better at what they do. There's research that shows just imagining an action actually fires up the same parts of the brain as doing the action for real.
Wow, so our brain doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one.
It seems that way, yeah. It's like tricking our minds into believing we've already achieved what we want, and that makes us more motivated to actually do it.
I've heard about Jim Carrey doing this check writing thing.
Oh, yeah.
When he was still unknown, he wrote himself a check, like for $10 million for acting services rendered, dated it a few years in the future, and carried it everywhere.
Yeah.
Wild, right? But did that actually make him successful, or was it just a coincidence? Because lots of people visualize, and it doesn't happen for them. What's missing?
That's where commitment comes in. Keller says visualization is strongest when it's paired with action.
Got it.
He quotes William Hutchison Murray, who said, "Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too."
Okay, so it's not just daydreaming. It's making that choice to go after what we want, taking that first step and then the next and the next.
Exactly. And Keller has these great stories about people who show this in action. He talks about Jerry Gladstone, who was dead set on getting a Disney license for his business. He was rejected over and over, but he wouldn't give up.
It shows how commitment can open doors you never even knew were there. Like the universe helps you out when you're really dedicated to something. But what about when you hit a wall? You know, What about when things don't go to plan?
That's where that idea of turning problems into opportunities comes in.
Okay,
Keller wants us to see setbacks not as defeats, but as, like, doorways to something better.
that's easier said than done, though, right? How do you make that mental switch go from this is a disaster to maybe this is actually good?
Well, Keller argues it comes down to your attitude.
Okay.
He tells the story of Dave Bruno, who was in this awful car accident, almost died.
Oh, wow.
But he used his recovery time to brainstorm, and he came up with this business idea that ended up being hugely successful.
So even in tragedy, there's potential for something good to come out of it.
Yeah. It's a reminder we have a choice, always, in how we see things, how we react to tough situations. But building that kind of resilience, that can't be easy. How do you stay positive when it seems like everything's falling apart?
Yeah, that's something we'll dig into more in the next part of our deep dive. We'll be looking at the power of words and how the language we use actually shapes our reality.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too. And for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to Motivation Library. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you're getting out of this deep dive.
We'll be back soon with part 2. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Motivation Library. Last time, in our deep dive into Jeff Keller's Attitude is Everything, we talked about our thoughts shaping our reality and how we can shift from negative to more positive thinking.
Yeah, we explored visualization, how important commitment is, and even turning challenges into opportunities. But there's one big piece we haven't gotten to yet.
What's that?
Our words, the power of what we say.
This is where things get really interesting. Keller spends a whole section on this.
He does.
How the language we use can help or hurt our success. He describes it like dominoes.
Okay, I like that.
Our thoughts, they lead to our words, then our words to our beliefs, beliefs to actions, and actions ultimately to our results.
Right, so it all starts with something as basic as what we say.
It's a chain reaction. And we often don't even realize how much our language impacts our subconscious.
It's true, like those songs that get stuck in your head.
Oh, yeah.
The more you hear certain phrases, the more they're just there in your thinking.
Exactly. Keller gives some great examples, like someone always saying, I'm no good at sales, or I can never afford that.
Yeah.
They're setting themselves up to fail, just reinforcing those beliefs that hold them back.
They are, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Keller says to pay attention to how we talk about 4 main things in life: relationships, money, career, and health.
Okay, makes sense. So how does that play out?
Well, someone who's always complaining about being single, saying all the good ones are taken, they're less likely to find a good relationship. It's like they're telling the universe, don't bother.
Interesting. So what if someone flipped the script, started using more positive language in those areas? Does that actually work?
Keller thinks so. He suggests this fun experiment. For a whole month, whenever someone asks, how are you? Answer with great or fantastic.
Even if you're not feeling amazing?
Exactly.
I like that. It's a small change, but could make a big difference. I'm definitely guilty of giving those I'm okay or not too bad answers.
Yeah, it's a habit. But why switch to all this positivity? Are we just faking it till we make it?
That's a good question. Keller talks about this act as if principle. Even if you don't feel positive, acting like you do can actually start to change how you feel inside.
Interesting. So it's like deciding to smile even when you're not feeling happy. That can actually boost your mood.
Exactly. It's not just fooling other people, it's tricking your own mind into feeling better. And who knows, maybe those good feelings will become real.
Maybe so. It's about building a more positive environment inside yourself. Another place Keller says to watch our words is complaining. He's not saying we should ignore problems or pretend everything's perfect.
Right.
But he does ask, how much time do we spend focusing on what's negative?
We all know those people who always have something to complain about.
We do.
It's fine to vent sometimes, but there's a difference between that and constantly being negative. What's the problem with complaining too much?
Keller says it just makes our own pain worse. It pushes people away, and it stops us from actually fixing anything.
It's like those complaints about the weather or traffic, stuff you can't do anything about.
Yeah, or those common cold complaints, everyone saying, I'm so sick, I feel awful. I mean, no one likes being sick.
Of course not.
But does dwelling on it help us get better?
Right.
Keller tells a story about a man named Pedro. Came to the U.S. from Honduras.
Okay.
And despite losing contact with his family after this terrible hurricane, he was still incredibly positive.
Wow, that puts things in perspective.
It does. It shows how much we complain about little things while others are facing real struggles. And Keller's not trying to guilt trip us. He's saying, be aware of how we talk and focus on what we can actually change.
So instead of complaining about traffic, use that time to listen to something inspiring.
Exactly. Or if you're dwelling on a health issue, focus on taking care of yourself, getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising.
About taking control, not playing the victim.
Yeah. And speaking of empowerment, Keller talks about who we surround ourselves with.
This is a big one.
He calls them nourishing people, the ones who lift you up, inspire you, challenge you to grow, support you in reaching your goals.
And then there are the opposite, the toxic people.
Right, the ones who drain your energy, make you doubt yourself, hold you back.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. Your social circle has a huge influence. But what about family? You can't always choose your relatives.
That's true.
Keller gets that. He says you can't always cut ties with every negative person, but set boundaries, limit your exposure, focus on the good relationships, the ones that lift you up.
It's about building a supportive environment.
Exactly. And this leads into another thing Keller talks about, facing our fears.
Okay.
He quotes this motivational speaker, Gil Eagles, who said, "If you want to be successful, you must be willing to be uncomfortable."
I like that.
It's about realizing that to grow, to achieve things, we have to step outside our comfort zone.
He uses the image of a circle for our comfort zone. Inside's all the stuff that feels safe, familiar. Outside's the stuff that challenges us, makes us nervous.
Right, and it's venturing out there that helps us reach our full potential.
Like learning to ride a bike. You fall, you get hurt, but eventually you get it. And that fear turns into freedom, accomplishment.
Yeah. And Keller says the more you push yourself, the bigger that circle gets. The things that used to scare you become less scary, and you're open to more possibilities.
He tells the story of Dottie Berman, this woman who, in her 50s, decided to retire from teaching and chase her dream of being in show business.
That's great.
It shows it's never too late.
It's not, but fear is powerful. How do we actually move past it when it's holding us back?
Keller says we need to see fear differently, not as an enemy, but as a sign that we're growing, expanding.
I see.
Every time we face our fears and act anyway, we build our confidence. It's like strengthening a muscle.
Right. And he says, don't let perfectionism stop you. It's fine to make mistakes, to stumble along the way. What matters is that you keep going, keep learning, keep growing.
And that brings us to another key thing, embracing failure as part of success.
We did touch on that before with Dave Bruno and the car accident.
Right. It's about understanding setbacks will happen, but they don't define us. We can choose how we respond.
Keller says, think back to learning to ride that bike. You didn't quit after the first fall.
No way.
You got back up and tried again until you got it.
But somewhere along the way, a lot of us start to be scared of failing, so afraid of messing up that we don't try anything new anymore. We stop growing.
It's true. Keller gives examples of successful people who had lots of setbacks early on, like Sally Jessy Raphael, that talk show host.
Oh, yeah.
She was fired 18 times. She lived on food stamps, even slept at her car sometimes, but she never gave up on her dream of being on the radio.
Wow.
Or Michael Jordan, considered one of the greatest basketball players ever.
Absolutely.
He said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed.
It's amazing seeing how these people took those failures and used them to get stronger.
Exactly. It's about seeing failure not as weakness, but as a step toward success. Even the most successful people mess up. The difference is they learn from it and keep going.
And speaking of trying, Keller also talks about networking.
Right. He defines it as building relationships that benefit both people involved.
So it's not about using people.
No, it's about making genuine connections, helping each other out, and creating those win-win situations.
He talked about his own experience with networking, how one connection led to all these amazing opportunities. It really shows how those chance encounters can change your life.
Absolutely. And Keller breaks down networking into 4 parts:
Okay, what are they?
attitude and action, referrals, communication, and follow-up.
Makes sense.
He says it's key to have a positive attitude, be genuinely interested in others, be involved in groups, and offer help to those in your network.
Good stuff.
And he encourages us to be proactive, to go out and meet new people, get out of our comfort zones.
Building a strong network takes time. It's about nurturing those relationships, being helpful, and being patient.
It does.
So as we wrap up this part, what are some of your biggest takeaways?
The power of language, for sure. It's easy to slip into negative talk without realizing it.
Yeah.
And I love that Keller suggests we try using more positive words, even if it feels weird at first.
Me too.
And embracing failure. That's something I personally struggle with.
Me too. It's so easy to be afraid of making mistakes, but those stories about people like Sally Jessy Raphael and Michael Jordan, they show that setbacks are normal, and it's how we react that matters. What's one thing you're thinking of doing based on what we've talked about?
I'm going to try that thing with answering "how are you?" with "great," even when I'm not feeling it. I'm also going to work on changing my self-talk about networking. I tend to get nervous on those situations, but I want to be more confident.
I love that. And for our listeners, we encourage you to think about your own experiences with these ideas. What stands out to you? What are you taking away from this? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Yes, please do.
And stick around for part 3. We'll put it all together and see how we can use these principles to create a life we truly love. Welcome back to Motivation Library. Over the last 2 parts of our deep dive into Jeff Keller's Attitude is Everything, we've really dug into some powerful ideas: the power of our thoughts, the impact of our words, and facing challenges head-on.
We also explored those positive influences in our lives, pushing our boundaries and the importance of networking. Now we get to tie it all together. How do we use all this to actually create a life we love?
It comes back to that core message: change your attitude, change your life. But what does that look like day to day? It's easy to talk theory, but how do we put it into practice and see real results?
Right. Keller reminds us it's not about becoming the super optimistic robot. We're not denying challenges exist or pretending everything's perfect.
Right.
It's about realizing we always have a choice in how we respond to those challenges.
I see. So you're not talking about ignoring problems.
No, he's saying be the kind of person who chooses to see the good, who looks for the silver lining, and doesn't let setbacks control them.
And how do you build that kind of resilience, especially when things are tough? It's easy to say just to be positive, but harder to do.
Yeah, and Keller doesn't just give vague advice, he gives real strategies for changing our mindset. He talks about focusing on what we can actually control, not dwelling on stuff we can't.
Right, letting go of the things we can't change.
Exactly. And challenging negative thoughts, reframing them in a positive light.
So it's about choosing to focus on solutions, not getting stuck on the problems.
Exactly. And gratitude. Taking time to appreciate the good stuff, even little things, can make a huge difference in how we see the world.
I think a lot of people underestimate the power of gratitude.
They do. And he also reminds us this positive attitude, it's not a one-time fix. It's a process, a constant choice to do things that support our well-being.
Like building any habit, it takes work, but it can change everything.
Absolutely. And Keller also pushes us to be the kind of people who commit to their goals, who go after them and don't give up.
Not just wishing for things, but taking action.
Exactly. He talks about setting clear goals, breaking them into smaller steps, and celebrating wins along the way. Surrounding ourselves with supportive people, too. People who believe in us, who keep us motivated.
It's about building that team around you.
Yeah. And self-care, making time for the things that recharge us, for our minds and bodies, that gives us the energy to keep going.
Taking care of yourself so you can show up for the things that matter. We can't give our best if we're running on empty.
Exactly. And speaking of showing up, Keller also talks about stepping outside our comfort zones.
Yeah, we touched on that before.
He says that's often where growth happens, when we challenge ourselves, try new things, face our fears.
That discomfort, it's not a sign to back down, it's a sign we're growing.
Exactly. And he reminds us it's okay to ask for help. We don't have to do everything alone.
There are people out there who have been where we want to go. They can guide us, support us, and building those connections, that network, that's how we thrive.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into attitude is everything, we want to leave you with a final thought, something to really think about.
What's one area in your life where you've been holding back? Maybe out of fear, doubt, or negativity?
What's one small step you can take today to change your attitude in that area? To start moving towards a life that's more fulfilling, more joyful.
It can be a tiny step, but take it. That one action can set off a chain reaction and change everything. And remember, you don't have to go it alone. Find those positive people, those mentors. Build a support system that helps you achieve your dreams.
We believe in you, and we can't wait to see what you accomplish when you embrace the power of a positive attitude. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those mental windows clean and remember,
Attitude is everything.